Have you ever heard a noise in your house at night that just wasn't right? A scuff, a creak, something that makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. For Mark, a quiet suburban dad, it started with a faint scratching sound from beneath the floor. At first, he dismissed it. Raccoons, probably. Or maybe the old house was just settling, but the noises didn't stop. They became more distinct, more intentional. It sounded less like an animal and more like something being dragged across the dirt floor of his crawl space. His wife, Sarah, slept soundly, oblivious. His two kids, tucked away in their beds, were dreaming of cartoons and playgrounds. But Mark would lie awake, his ears straining in the silence, listening to the unsettling symphony from below. He tried to rationalize it. Possums, leaky pipes. But a part of him, a primal, ancient part, knew something was wrong. The scratching would sometimes stop for days, lulling him into a false sense of security. Then, just as he'd start to relax, it would return, louder and more insistent than before. One night, it was different. It wasn't just scratching. It was a soft, rhythmic thudding, thud, 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 like a slow, deliberate heartbeat echoing up through the floorboards. That was the final straw. Sleep-deprived and on edge, Mark decided he needed proof. He needed to see what was making that noise. The next morning, fueled by coffee and a growing sense of dread, he bought a small, motion-activated security camera. It was a simple device, one he could monitor from his phone. His plan was straightforward: install it in the crawlspace and finally get some answers. The entrance to the crawlspace was a small, dusty hatch in the back of the storage closet. Pulling it open released a wave of musty, earthy air. It smelled of damp soil and decay. Armed with a flashlight, Mark peered into the darkness. The beam cut through the black, revealing a labyrinth of pipes, support beams, and a dirt floor stretching out into the shadows. He took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves, and lowered himself into the tight, claustrophobic space. It was even colder down there than he'd imagined. He crawled on his hands and knees, the damp earth staining his jeans. Every little sound was amplified: the drip of a distant pipe, the crunch of the dirt beneath him. He found a good spot, a wooden support beam that gave a clear view of the entire area, and carefully mounted the camera. He checked the live feed on his phone. The camera's night vision bathed the entire crawlspace in an eerie, monochrome green. It looked like a scene from a found-footage horror movie. Satisfied, he connected the camera to a long extension cord. He de-run from the closet and scrambled back out, sealing the hatch behind him. He felt a sense of relief, but also a knot of anxiety in his stomach. What if he found something he didn't want to find? That night, he tried to act normal. He helped his kids with their homework, had dinner with Sarah, and they watched a movie together. But his mind was elsewhere. He kept compulsively checking his phone, watching the live feed of the empty, silent crawlspace. Nothing, just the ghostly green image of dirt and pipes. By midnight, his eyes were heavy. He figured whatever it wasn't coming tonight. He set his phone to record any motion-activated events, plugged it in to charge on his knit stand, and finally drifted off to a restless sleep. The next morning, the first thing he did was grab his phone. His heart pounded as he opened the camera app. There was one new recording. A single clip, logged at 3:47 a.m. He took a deep breath and pressed play. The video was grainy, bathed in that familiar sickly green night vision. For the first few seconds, nothing happened. The crawlspace was still and silent. Then, a shape began to emerge from the deepest, darkest corner, a place the camera's light barely reached. It moved slowly, unnaturally, not like an animal. It was a person, or at least, it looked like one. The figure was gaunt, emaciated, and seemed to crawl on all fours toward the camera. Mark felt a cold sweat break out on his forehead. Who was this? How did they get in? The figure stopped directly in front of the camera, filling the frame. And then, it looked up. Two wide, dark eyes stared directly into the lens. They were empty, devoid of any emotion, just black pits in a pale, grimy face. A lipless mouth was slightly agape, as if frozen in a silent scream. Mark felt his blood run cold. The stare was intense, personal. It felt like this person wasn't just looking at the camera. They were looking at ***. The figure just stayed there, unblinking, staring. The silence was more terrifying than any scream could have been. Mark's hands were shaking as he stared at the horrifying image on his phone. Who was this person living under his house? How long had they been there? His mind reeled with 1,000 terrifying questions. He fumbled with his phone, his finger hovering over the button to call the police. But then, he noticed something else, something that made the impossible situation even more incomprehensible. He looked at the top of the screen, at the information overlay on the video feed. The timestamp, 3:47 a.m. His eyes then drifted to the status icon in the corner. A small, simple icon that made his heart stop completely. It was the icon for a disconnected device. The status read, "Camera offline." He quickly swiped over to the device settings page, his mind refusing to process what he was seeing. The camera's event log showed it had been powered down, unplugged, at exactly 12:05 a.m., just after he'd gone to sleep. It was impossible. The camera had no battery. It had to be plugged in to work. It had been without power for nearly 4 hours before this footage was supposedly recorded. He played the clip again, his eyes wide with terror. The gaunt face stared back at him, the black eyes boring into his soul. The timestamp was clear, 3:47 a.m. The camera had been unplugged since midnight. But the footage was there, the recording existed. It was a video from a dead camera. It meant the image he was seeing, the thing that was under his house, wasn't just a person. It was something else, something that didn't follow the rules of reality. And it knew he was watching. Thank you so much for watching. This one was a bit of a mind bender, right? If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button and subscribe for more chills. Let me know in the comments what you think was down there in that crawl space. Stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video.